What up, City of Champions? Super thrilled about my guest this week because I've been trying to lock him down for about 2 months, and finally our schedules just happen to sync up. He is professional boxer Adam Braidwood. Now, most of you might recall Adam from his fight in Edmonton this past June that sadly ended Tim Hague's life. What you guys may not know is that Adam's a former Edmonton Eskimo first overall pick and that he does tremendous work with at-risk youth. He also spent 2 years in jail for various drug and violence charges. He kicked a severe opioid addiction cold turkey and won the WBU heavyweight title while still living in a halfway house. Adam's a man who's gone through hell and back on more than several occasions, and he's lived to tell the tale. His story is one of excruciating lows, but I think even greater redemption for it. Adam was incredibly gracious to have taken an hour out of his hectic pre-fight schedule this week to talk with me. His rawness, his vulnerability in everything that he talks about is just absolutely palpable. And I think the podcast title really fits him perfectly. A champion can be defined in many ways. A champion can be someone who overcomes tremendous mental or physical deficit to live a normal life. A champion can also be someone who rises above the average of the masses to accomplish something remarkable. And no matter the case, the common thread is that the greater the adversity one faces, the harder the struggle, the larger their legend grows. Adam Braidwood embodies a true champion, and I hope you enjoy his story. So sitting here today with Adam Braidwood, professional boxer, ex-football player, amongst a number of other things.
Ex-con.
Okay, let's jump right into it. How you doing today? How's training going?
You know what, it's good. It's basically just kind of tidying things up. I had a really good training camp. I'm working full-time with Richard Lestage, who's probably one of the best-kept secrets in Canada boxing.
He just blew it. He blew his secret.
I blew his secret. I don't think he minds. He's hiding all the way up in the middle of Vancouver Island. I don't think too many people can find him, but I'm really lucky to be able to work with him. He's worked with Canadian champions, world champions, and the thing is with Rich is he's taken guys from a very young age and developed them and gave them the skills that they needed. And these are guys, local guys. He didn't go to Vegas and get the cream of the crop. Get to work with that. He just worked with local kids in tiny little Parksville, Vancouver Island, and developed some champions. And we have a really good relationship. I'm really lucky to work with him and had a great training camp.
Yeah. So you're in the heavyweight division. So what are you going to fight at?
I'll probably be about 250. I've been as low as 240. It honestly just depends. Like, I'm so used to carrying more weight.
Mm-hmm. What do you walk around at normally?
About 250.
250. Okay, so you don't have to cut a great deal.
No, I don't have to cut at all. It's more or less it just kind of happens naturally. Like, some days on weigh-ins I'm 242 pounds. Some days I'm 250. It just really just depends on where my energy level's at, how my body rebounds.
Yeah.
This training camp, I was pretty much 240 the whole training camp, and then I have a feeling weigh-ins are going to come and I'm going to be 250 pounds.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening, sitting with Adam, he's 6'4".
6'4", 6'5".
And 250, just a mountain of a man. I can only imagine what your opponents must think in the ring. But let's rewind a bit. Let's go back to the origin story. So you grew up in the Lower Mainland in BC, right?
Yeah.
And you started playing football at a pretty young age.
Yeah, I think I was 7.
7. And so how did that career go from the time you started playing junior or whatever they call it into college?
Yeah, community football. It's one of those things that, my parents knew I had to do something. I was like a little terror. And so, I was trying to wrestle, I was trying to box, I was trying to do all these things, and one of my neighbors played football and said, well, why don't you play football? So I ended up signing up, and I think the first play of the first game I ever played in, they ended up carrying the kid off in a stretcher. And I was like, all right, I'm good at this, we're going to stick with this. And, it was just one of those things that developed over time. I was just doing it, I kind of became obsessed with it. And then around grade 10, I hit a growth spurt. I was never bigger than everyone. I hit a growth spurt in grade 10. And, all of a sudden people started looking at me like, hey, this kid has potential. I think when I was 15, I was about 6'1", 185 pounds, in good shape. And people started to take notice. I remember I actually went to a combine. There was this thing called the Ron Diaz combine. This was like computers were just getting started. You know, to make a highlight tape, you had to go get a VHS, and you had to find somebody local to do all this stuff. Like, and you know, you couldn't email people, you couldn't like look stuff up on the internet very easily. Like, it was difficult, and you know, I'm still basically. You know, I can work Instagram, but I can't really work a computer too well. But one of the things that you had to do, you had to write handwritten letters. And so I was actually reading the paper, and I saw this advertisement that said the Ron Diaz football combine, UCLA will be there, Oregon will be there, all these different. I was like, man, I'm going to go to that. I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I need $20. And I need bus fare. And she's like, for what? So I was like, well, I'm going to go try out for these football guys. And, you know, my parents were really supportive. And they were like, sure. And so they ended up driving me there. And it was at Burnaby A Rinks, and I went through, and they were looking at a couple of local guys. Bart Swazinski was one of them. They were a little bit older. They were in grade 12, grade 11, and they were big fellas. And I went in there and ended up doing pretty good. You know, like we were doing one-on-ones, we were doing running drills. I was pretty fast, and I caught the attention of some of them. And then there was a trainer there named Robert Holland who runs the program Sports Conditioning. He's actually down in California now. And I kind of caught their eye, and they went for lunch after, and then they came out and talked to us, and they were like, yeah, you know, maybe go to junior college or something and, you know, develop. We want to see you get a little bit bigger for your position, a little bit faster. I was like, junior college? I was like, I'm going into grade 10. And they're like, what?
They thought you were grade 12?
They're like, what's your name? Yeah, they're like, what's your name? They're like, we're going to keep an eye on you. And so anyways, I ended up training with Robert, who played in the NFL for a little bit, and the CFL. He actually played here in Edmonton. And he just kind of mentored me and was like, look, this is what you got to do. You got to write letters. So I'd write, you know, 100 handwritten letters to all the Division I universities. I'd send them all out. I made a list of 10 dream schools I wanted, 10 real schools that I thought I could maybe get, and then 10 backups. And I wrote them all letters, made them highlight tapes, sent it to them. Then I went down to the Oregon Nike Combine, and this is before it was invitation only back then. Like now, I think you just pay a fee and you can go try out. And they have tons of them, but there's only 2 back then. There was one in Oregon, I think one in Texas, and maybe New York. And I ended up going down there, and I was fortunate enough that I had played men's league flag football, and so that's full contact on the line. So I'm playing with CFL guys, ex-college guys, like, you know, older guys, but I'm 15. And so I had to learn how to pass rush with no pads on. Well, that's what we did down there, right? And these guys were used to pads, so they're trying to hit me, and I'm moving. So I ended up being ranked number 5 on the west coast of Canada, or on the west coast of the United States and Canada by Pac West football. So I got a bunch of scholarship offers and ended up going to Washington State. They showed the most interest. They were like calling my neighbor's house and shit.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, because they weren't allowed to contact me. I was too young, so they called my neighbor, and my neighbor would walk over and be like, yeah, this university wants you to call them. I was allowed to call them.
Right.
So it was this big runaround.
This is what, like 2000, kind of?
Yeah, it's about 2000, yeah.
2000, so yeah, before kind of the internet was a big thing, and people had to be creative. That's amazing that at grade 10 you asked your parents for $20 to go do this, and bus fare versus kids who $20 like to go spend at the arcade or go see a movie. Like, you're pretty driven. Well, yeah, I kind of saw the world a little bit differently, I guess, just with sports. And you know, like, I grew up in a mixed race neighborhood, you know, Surrey, Delta, a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures, so I was exposed to a lot of different things, and I was like, well, this world's like a big place. I'd like to go see some of it. I seem to be good at sports, like maybe that's an avenue I could do. I want to make something of myself, right? I don't want to be stuck here and doing a job, which there's nothing wrong with. It's just, you know, like, I was driven outside of that. Whatever it was that I was going to do, I wanted to do it very well and see how far it could take me, right? And so I knew, you know, going to university, like all these things, they open up doors for you, right? So I was like, all I wanted to do is get on TV, be a scholarship football player. That was like my goal. I was like, I can get on TV, I'm going to play college football. That shit is big time. And you know what? My first year I ended up playing in the Rose Bowl. So I was like, all right, I did it. Yeah, you had a pretty successful college career, right?
Yeah, it was good. You know, I ended up being an all Pac-10 freshman. Ended up playing in the Rose Bowl, ended up playing in the Holiday Bowl. Ended up winning a Pac-10 championship. You know, it was a good experience for sure.
And then 2006 rolls around and you got drafted.
Yeah, I was pissed. I wanted to play in the NFL.
Can you get drafted to both?
You can, but I didn't.
Did you get drafted to the NFL?
No. There's.
How did you look at that? Did you see that at the CFL as a stepping stone to the NFL?
That's what I was hoping for. I didn't really understand. Like, you know, I'd been in the States for 4 years, and when you're 17 and you leave like 4 years is a lifetime, right? Like that's all I knew was the NFL, America.
Yeah.
I always grew up watching the CFL, and I ended up loving the CFL. I was actually happier playing in the CFL than I was in college.
Right.
It ended up being a great experience. I ended up loving Edmonton. I ended up buying a house out here, and I thought it was probably the best. It was the most fun playing football I ever had. Even though we were losing, it was still like a lot of fun. It ended up getting bad later, but.
What did you think about Edmonton when you first heard that? Had you been here before?
No, but my mom grew up out here.
Okay, so you're like, that's kind of a cool throwback to mom going.
Yeah, and I had family out here, and I didn't really know too much about it. And Pullman, Washington is similar temperatures, so and it's like a similar type. It's Eastern Washington, right? It's more like Edmonton. So I got here, and I was like, okay, this is home. Like everybody's cool, right?
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. And then you scored your first touchdown. 2006, September 8th, I think, on a fumble by Henry Burris.
Yeah, I stripped Henry, picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown. That game kind of made me, because I ended up playing by accident. I was fifth string coming into the season, and I was in over my head, so they thought, but I was paying attention to what everybody was doing. Like when all these guys were practicing, I was watching the good guys. There was Joe Mumford, who's a CFL legend. We had some really good players, and in the BC game, there ended up being an injury, and then a player got kicked out. Joe got kicked out, actually. Those two dirty players, Jimenez and Murphy. I still wouldn't mind taking a couple of rounds out of those guys. But they ended up getting kicked out of the game, and I'd been paying attention. I was ready to play.
Right.
I was like, I just needed an opportunity. So I ended up doing fairly well, and it kind of made my career, those, especially the BC game, and then I think I got a sack and then a forced fumble on Dickinson, and that kind of made my career.
Where was the disconnect between such a successful college career and then coming in as fifth string in the CFL?
I was pissed.
No, but what was the problem? Like, were you just undervalued, underrated, or had you not done enough in college to really establish yourself?
I think any professional sport, there's a huge gap between college and pro. Mm-hmm. Like, I think some guys get helped along, or maybe they're just very, very gifted athletes to the point that they can come in and play. But there's a big difference between a 28 or 29-year-old man and, a 21-year-old kid. Somebody who's played in the CFL for any more than 5 years knows the difference, right? And so, it's just kind of a grit, technique, experience, a drive. A lot of these guys are feeding their families. Like, it's a different mentality. College is like, it's a brotherhood, it's a fun experience, but you're a kid, though.
Right.
Like, you're a total kid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you turn into a man until you're over 25.
Right.
Really.
Blue Mountain State kind of having fun. And
yeah. Like, it's serious. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I tell people all the time, it's like college, like, some of the guys I played with ended up joining the military, right? It's a natural progression. And one of my buddies became an actual Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. And he was like, man, he goes, minus the sleep deprivation, training camp in college was the hardest shit that I've ever done. And he goes, it's the worst. Like, you get up at 6, you don't get home till midnight. You got 3 practices a day, plus training, film. Like they get the most mileage out of you that they can, right?
But when you love that sport, like, it doesn't feel like work, right? You seem like the guy who kind of embellished that.
I was pissed. Like, I never missed a day of practice or a workout in 4 years because I loved it. Like, that's what I wanted to do. So
then talk about the injury in 2008.
Yeah, 2008 2007. I think it was right at the end of the season.
Okay.
Second to last game of the season, I was covering for a guy who got injured on kickoff, and I was just running down the field. And I ended up doing kind of good at kickoff, which is unnormal, which is not very normal. It's 275 pounds, I think, and I was running down there, and I just got hit funny. I'd never been injured in my life, never missed a game, never missed a practice, anything, and I just kind of hit a funny spot on the field and tore my ACL, and then I came back. And I was like, oh, whatever, it's an injury, who cares, it's nothing, right? Everyone's like, no, it's serious. I'm like, it's nothing, right? And so I kind of just ignored it. I didn't take it very serious. So anyways, I ended up getting the surgery, ended up not really doing what I should have. Like, I was kind of just ignoring it and doing what I normally do.
Right, not doing like the proper rehab procedure.
Well, I was doing the proper rehab, but I was probably doing too much.
Okay.
And I just wasn't really like paying attention to like what was happening with the knee. Like, I didn't care if it swelled up. I was like, I'm still going to run. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up getting fitted for a knee brace that was missing a component. Yeah, like the most important component that keeps it from locking.
Right.
So I'm going out to practice, and it's only been 5.5 months, and it's usually 6 months before you really start to practice. Well, I ended up doing a one-on-one with one of the offensive linemen, who's now actually a police officer out here.
Okay.
And I ended up tearing it again.
Yeah.
Well, there was some miscommunication. I don't want to get into all of it because it was kind of a shady situation, but I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. Right. They ended up telling me my knee was okay, and they thought it was. So they ended up doing another surgery and cleaning it out. And it was just kind of a misdiagnosis, like something was missed, right? Like there was a tear, my ACL was torn, and it was just kind of missed. And so I ended up practicing the last half of the season. I rehabbed it myself, just was running on the sideline, but I had no ACL. I had a torn MCL, I had a bone bruise, and a torn meniscus.
And you're just gutting it out this whole time?
Yeah, well, I was taking a lot of painkillers,
right.
and gutting it out, I guess. And so throughout the season, I ended up getting to the point where I was almost ready to play. The team was doing horrible, and I was on the 8-game suspended list or injury, and so like my salary wasn't going towards the salary cap, so they kept me on the injured list. But I was almost ready to play by week 7 or by week 9, I think. I was almost ready to play, and anyways, it ended up not happening. And so I had 2 fights in the off season because I was pissed off. I was like, man, my football career is over. My knee will never be the same. It didn't feel right. Like I couldn't even do a single leg press with any weight without my legs shaking and giving out. Like I knew something was wrong. So I flew out to see a doctor back east on my own dime. It cost me about $4,000 because I was going to get these injections into my knee, and that was back in the day before stem cells was really a thing. But this doctor had the stem cells. I think he was smuggling them into the country somehow, and I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to play again.
At that point, it was fairly experimental and not well researched. Now it's kind of more commonplace.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so I ended up doing 2 fights that off season. The first one, boxing fight. I couldn't fight any MMA before. I did MMA the year before because my knee wasn't the same. Well, I did one fight with no ACL, meniscus.
That was your first fight?
Yeah, my first boxing fight.
Yeah.
I knocked that guy out, and then the second fight, just things like in that training camp did not go according to plan. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from Lee because he beat me up. Like that's just the way it is. But my knee gave out. I wasn't feeling right. I had a bad training camp. I wasn't focused. I was going through some personal stuff. I was fighting the addiction. I got sick a bunch. Like I wasn't myself, so I got beat up. So there goes my boxing career. So then I fly out to see this doctor, and he feels my knee. He goes, your knee's torn, man. There's nothing I can do for injection. What do you mean my knee's torn? He looks at the old MRI. He goes, it says right here it's torn. He goes, we'll get another MRI tomorrow, but I'm going to tell you right now it's torn. You need to get it repaired again. So I'm like, oh, great. Right? Like, cool. Like, there goes my boxing career.
What else?
There goes
pile
my
it on me,
career.
right?
Yeah, I just bought a new house. There was more to it, too. I was actually engaged. That fell through. So like now my health is gone, my personal life is crap, my finances are crap, my career's gone, and I'm like, oh cool, here we go. And so I come to the stadium, and the training camp's about to start, and I slap down 2 MRIs, and I'm like, well, I'm not playing this year. I need to get surgery. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, here it is right here. Here's 2 MRIs, one from last year, one from right here. It's one of those things that it was something that was missed. It's a medical profession. It's not exact science. Like you can't. I had so much scar tissue in my knee they couldn't see everything properly, right? So it was just something that was missed. And then when they cleaned it out, if they had MRI'd it again after they gone into the surgery and cleaned it out, they would have seen that it was torn. And there was still part of it there, but just over the period of the year of working out, the rest of it just tore. So it looked like there was still an ACL there, but there wasn't. And so anyways, so they're like, okay, well, we'll get you the surgery. Just stay home. So there I am in a city where I don't really know that many people. Just bought a house. I get surgery, and I'm sitting in my house by myself.
And of course, what do they give you after the surgery?
Painkillers. And you know what? I'll say this. Like, everybody blames the doctors. Like, I manipulated them all. I was, like, taking way more than I should have because I was dealing with, like, my personal issues. And, I manipulated a lot of doctors into giving me pain medicine because then I'd go in and I'd hear that Valium was really fun, and so I'd be like, hey, I can't sleep, and I'd look up all the symptoms.
At that point it was easy, WebMD, how do I get this,
and so it was just one of those things like where one thing carried into the other, and then I started selling them to support my habit, and then I started doing more drugs, and it was just like I wasn't myself during that time. And then I actually left after that season and stopped everything cold turkey. I caught pneumonia. went through withdrawals in this little crummy basement suite I was living in, sleeping on the floor for 2 weeks. I was just laid up, sweating it out, no TV, no nothing, and like was basically like, hey, I gotta go back to Vancouver and try to make something of myself. I rehabbed it. I actually hired a trainer out there. This guy, Derek Hansen, really good guy, very intelligent guy. He actually got my knee better. I put on 30 pounds of muscle, got back in shape, and ended up playing in the 2010 season. But I was fighting painkillers. I had started to sell drugs.
Right, so the addiction stuff has still kept up with you a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though you had kicked it, or even though you kind of...
I kicked it, but I got back into
detox?
it.
Yeah. And had you sought out any help at that point? Or was it just you felt like you power through it yourself?
I was in just total denial.
Yeah.
Like, it's really what it comes to. I was lying to everybody. Like, people would be like, you're all right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And like, you know, but nobody really knew. Like, it wasn't really as big of an issue as it is now. Right, and then I'd never done drugs or even really drank in my life, so nobody ever thought anything was wrong.
Right, that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, there was no issue with alcohol or drugs when you were younger, right?
No, I could
you were purely like football focused.
Yeah, like I'd have a couple drinks here and there, get drunk with the guys, and whatever. But and even now to this day, I can have 2 or 3 drinks. Well, I can't really. I'm on parole, but I can have 2 or 3 drinks and put it down, like, and then not do it again for a year. Like, it doesn't really bug me.
Well, the scale of addiction is so wide ranging and so varied, right? People think you're either an addict or you're not realizing that there's everyone on all parts of the spectrum, right? Like, you can be the guy that can't even have a sip, and if you have a sip, you're gone, you're overboard, right? But then there's people who can have 4 or 5, and then that 6th one is where they go over the limit, right? And you know, some people feel like at the end of a hard day they need a drink, right? Some people have never thought that, but yet still go binge drink on the weekend, right? Just because it's fun. So I mean, like, and you talk to any former addict or former person who's struggled with that, and I'm sure you're the same. Like, you've done a lot of self-reflection, right? Some really like intentional thinking into what caused that with me. And so what did you kind of trace that to?
Well, it kind of came down to the fact that you know, I offended for the 3rd time. I discharged a firearm in my house, and I got court ordered to send to rehab. And so then I started to like listen to people's stories. I had a really good connection with one of the counselors there, professionally, and she got me talking about some things in my life that had skewed my way of thinking, right? And I think when you're a high-level athlete, I believe this is true for a lot of them, you're so focused on your sport, and you have people around you that are kind of like navigating you to like maybe take other parts of your life and sacrifice them for the sport. So you miss a lot. Like, I've never been in a really good, healthy relationship. You know, I've been very disconnected from my family for a lot of years. Like, it's starting to rebuild now. All my really close friends, I'm not in regular day-to-day contact with. I've made amazing friends throughout the time. We stay in touch. But you become very disconnected and isolated. You don't process things the same way other people do. Like, my problem solving was so far away from everything. You know, like, realistically, like, when you break it down, I've made a living kicking the shit out of people for my whole life. Right? So that's my problem solving. You know? Like, so it comes down to that. Like, that's where I value myself. Like, someone goes, go take this guy out. Sure. So that translated into all aspects of my life, and you throw drugs into the mix, and your line of thinking, your problem solving skills become very, you know, very skewed. Like, for me, painkillers, it wasn't about like me loving doing drugs. It was about me having an issue, and this was the problem solver. I'm in pain. I'm going to take this painkiller. I can go play football without thinking of any of the consequences. Right. Normal people are like, fuck, I can't take that. I got to operate a tractor or whatever. Like, whatever it is they're doing. So my problem solving skills were very skewed. It was do whatever you have to do to go play. And even today, even now, it doesn't matter what happens this week, I have to go fight. You know, if I break my break my rib in a car accident, I'm going to get a cortisone shot so I can go fight. Because that's, otherwise I don't eat. And so, you know, it's just one of those things, like, your problem solving is very skewed. You don't have like these cushions. Like, I don't get to go on EI. I don't get to like have my boss pay for my treatment. It's like, no, I went to prison. I got a court order, and I got to pay for it myself, and I got to give $32,000 to my lawyer. You know, so it's like it's a rough way to live your life, and it kind of messes up your problem solving in regular society sense, right? So, like, you know,
Well, you can go either way, I think, right? Like you can just go totally down the wrong path and hit rock bottom, or you can look at it like the way you're looking at it now. It's like, no, there's no other way. Like we're going through this, and we've got to overcome everything that's ahead of us, because life doesn't get easier at any point, right? We just get stronger every day. I think two things too that are vital. Probably you felt like there was no one there that you could talk to or share. No. Plus, you didn't even know that you had this issue, right? No. Like no one's easier to lie to than yourself, and especially if you don't have close people challenging you on stuff, and it makes it worse. I think even for athletes, because especially top performers, they're going to like the people around you are going to prop you up so you perform. So let's just get through this season or this game even, and then we'll worry about everything else that's wrong in your life later. But it's all about how good was your last game.
Well, yeah, and that's just it. And the value of yourself becomes very skewed, right? Like it's the highs are super high, the lows are super low, and like how do you reciprocate that in life? Like for me, I was like, I just want to die playing football because I don't know what to do after the age of 30 that's going to reciprocate this kind of excitement, right? And now people are like, oh, aren't you going to get that with boxing? I was like, no, because I already know what it's like to fall. I'm just going to move on to the next thing after my boxing career is done.
Right.
And so, it's a natural progression of life. I think it's just, like it's not an up and down. It's a sideways, left to right, up and down, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of what I went through. And so hopefully I'm better because of all of it. And, just a lot of people got hurt along the way is all.
You haven't lost a boxing fight in a long time.
No, not since that one in 2008.
So what... Do you know how you're going to deal with the loss if you have one? Have you thought about that, or are you just like, no, I'm just winning every one straight through?
Well, I look at it this way. I'm not competitive with other people. I hear a lot of like high-level athletes. I'm so competitive, I have to win at everything, and I'm like, that's not really relevant to me because I don't really care if I beat you at cards or at a video game. Like, I'm competitive with myself.
Yeah.
So if somebody beats me because they're better than me, fine. I'm going to try to fight you again because I'm going to fix whatever mistake that I made, because I honestly believe like once I have the skills, I shouldn't lose to anybody if I prepare properly. Right? So if there's something that I did wrong, then I'll just go back and try to correct that. If I'm just not qualified to be in the game anymore, then I'll retire. And that's just the reality. Like I don't have any delusions that I'm going to make millions and retire off this and I'm going to be this guy or that guy. Like I understand the road is very difficult. I just believe if I listen to the people around me that none of these people should beat me. The whole reason why I box is because people can beat me. And that's the game I like to play. Right. Like if we're living in the 1800s and I got to be the best gunslinger, I'm going to go do that because I can lose. Yeah. That's the whole risk. That's what I like. Right, so that's how I deal with it.
So what are you going to do after boxing? Any thought to that?
I don't think in terms of like lifetime. I just don't, because things change. I have kind of a 10-year plan. I believe in different revenue streams. I believe that boxing can, like football should have, transitioned me into the real world.
Right.
I train people, I hold boot camps, I do self-defense classes. I find it rewarding. I just coached at a charity boxing event. I worked with a lot of people who were fighting for the first time, and they had and I was kind of against it because I understand the risks in boxing. And then I heard the reasons for wanting to do it. It was about building confidence, and it was about helping people, and so I participated in it, right? I do some public speaking, and to say that I have like a plan for exactly what I'm going to do after I'm boxing, I have about 5 plans.
Right.
And I plan on doing all of them.
There's no reason why you can't, right? How important was giving back and helping other people? When did you first discover kind of how good that makes you feel?
Pretty much after the first class. Like people, because here's the thing, there's a huge gap in knowledge in everything, right? Like if someone comes in and says that like for you and for your industry, right? Like someone's like, oh, I'm an expert at podcasts, I know media, I'm this, I'm that, and they don't know shit, but you believe them for 6-8 months and waste your time. Like that's a huge letdown. Right. So like I don't know everything about boxing. I don't know anything even close, right? Like I've the KO boxing crew has been training champions before I was even born. but I do know enough to teach someone who knows nothing the right way to do it. Right. So as soon as they were like, oh, like my coach was this and that, and he told me to do this, and like as soon as I could explain to them why that was not necessarily the best way of doing things, and they subscribed to my way of doing things, I was like, okay, like I haven't been wasting my time. Because like my whole goal, I always tell my coach the same thing. I go, look, I don't care about the belts and the money and all this stuff. Like, yeah, it's important because, like, you know, it's comfort.
Right.
That's it. It's comfort, right? Having money is comfort. My thing is to be real. That's it. Like, I don't walk around. I didn't get tattoos to try to look tough. I don't walk around and dress a certain way to try to, like, scare people. Like, I try to be as friendly as possible because I'm real. Like, I already know what I'm capable of. I've gone the distance. I know the distance that I'm willing to go in life. And most people don't. They think they do. They've rehearsed these scenarios in their head, and that makes you like sick. It's like a virus. You know what I mean? Like you're delusional. Like, well, I can do that. I can do this. I'm that. Well, you've never done it.
And then when things don't go your way, it breaks you down even further, right?
Well, yeah. Then you just make excuses.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what you just said reminds me of a quote: when you're good at things, you tell people, but when you're great, they tell you. Right?
Yeah.
You don't need to go boasting about it.
No, that's just it. I run into a million guys who are like, oh yeah, I boxed him. Like, yeah, where? Well, you know, I sparred. Where? Well, I've been in a lot of street fights. Well, okay. Again, you know, like, what are you talking about? Like, why are we talking? I'm not going to talk to you because you're a good boxer. I'm going to talk to you because you're like a nice person.
Right. So I want to get back to the story to finish out to where we are today, just because I think it's so important that people understanding you a bit better and hopefully understanding themselves. So you ended up, what year going to prison?
Yeah.
What year did you go?
Well, I got arrested in 2010 during the Grey Cup here in Edmonton. I was in and out of jail for the next 3 years, and I got sentenced in April of 2015. I spent, or was it 2014? Anyways, doesn't matter. I spent 2 years inside. I got sentenced to almost 6 years.
Right.
I spent 2 years inside, and then basically because of my background with football and fighting and university, they let me out on day parole, which almost never happens.
So you got to cut in a third, basically.
Yes, because so like the way the federal system works is that you're eligible for day parole at your 1/3, 1/2 for full parole, and then 3/4 of your sentence they have to let you out on your stat release to get you reintegrated into society, right? So you have to stay in a halfway house, blah, 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 do all this stuff.
What did you think when they said 6 years? What was going through your head at that time?
I knew it was coming, right? Like, it was a decision that I made to plead guilty. Like, they offered me a deal. They said, look, either you can fight everything or you can plead guilty to everything. And I knew what I had done and what I hadn't done. I knew what I had done and what I hadn't done. And basically, the stuff that I had done, I was busted red-handed.
Yeah.
Stuff that I hadn't done, I had a chance, but not a good enough chance to risk getting 15 years is what I was looking at if I fought it and lost.
Yeah.
So I did a risk-reward scenario in my head. I said, it's going to cost me another $100,000, which I'd already spent, pretty close to that, to fight all this stuff. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to lose.
Yeah. It's a business decision at that point, right?
Yeah, and so they were like, okay, we're going to combine all your sentences, run it concurrently, and it was 5 years, 8 months, and 10 days. Yeah. And I was like, shit.
Shit. Yeah. Like, and you thought you were probably going to serve most of that, if not all of it?
I thought I was doing all of it. I had no idea how it worked.
At this point, too, were you still dealing with some addiction and substance stuff? So that must just have made things even harder. Yeah,
I went in, I was on a drug called Suboxone, and I didn't realize you could get high off of it. I thought it was just a drug that you take to avoid getting high, but you can get high off of it. And so I was getting high every day.
Not realizing it.
Not really realizing. I was like, I feel good after I take my meds. And then, eventually clued in, and that created a whole bunch of other problems. Well, they eventually cut me off because I was just fucking... Right. I was recreationally using drugs again. Yeah. Inside. Yeah. On their dime.
Right. So they cut you off and you had to basically detox on your own in there?
Yeah, I just went through withdrawal, and it was like, jail is not a fun place. No. And so it created a whole bunch of issues. I wasn't sleeping. Like, it was crap, man. Like, I could sit here and tell you stories all day. Me passed out, puking and crapping. Yeah. Laying on a concrete floor with the light on 24 hours a day, no TV, no blanket, no pillow. Yeah. Laying on a concrete floor. Like, it's not fun.
So would you say that was absolute rock bottom?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, but I went through a lot of rock bottoms, man. Like, You know, the halfway house I was living at when I got released doubled as a homeless shelter. You know, and it's full of the worst kind of people you could ever imagine. Like, the island's a funny place because the island is like basically a big open custody prison in some ways. Like, obviously it's not, it's a beautiful place to live, but when you're on parole,
right,
it is, because it's got the highest police presence, the government's right there, it's the provincial capital, so, you know, I was followed everywhere, and the place that I was living was like, man, I'd find dead rats in my shoe. I'd find dead people in the bathroom.
Jesus Christ.
Overdose on fentanyl or whatever, right? So guys, purple, puke, shit everywhere.
People probably don't make friends in there. You probably just...
I try not to.
Yeah, you probably just keep your head down, do your thing.
I put in my headphones and, like, I stand out so everyone's like, hey, big guy, like, wants to ask a million, because I'm doing stuff,
just
right?
Fuck off, yeah.
And so I got to walk through 70 people sitting there looking to just latch on to anything that they can to try to get out of their miserable lives. And I'm like walking, taking the bus, doing construction, digging holes, whatever I got to do just so I can eat.
I want to hear the construction story. Your first day on the job.
So, like, I've had like some part-time jobs in my life, and like, but I've never really had to like work for a living. And so I show up at this job site and I'm like, yeah, cool, construction. I got this guy, Joe's my boss.
Yeah, you're on parole, you're getting a head start, you're doing this.
I'm sure this guy's cool, everybody's cool, it's going to be easy, you know, we're just going to, and I'm like, he starts like running, and it's like 6 a.m, I think I'm there. Just took the bus there, sitting there with all these guys, and they're kind of like looking at me like, who is this guy? I'm sitting there, I got a big beard, I'm like 260 pounds. And this boss is like telling me what to do. He's like, yeah, you're going to go up here, and like, he's like, you don't have any tools? I was like, I don't have any tools.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, I'll get you a crowbar. And so like I climb up the scaffolding, and scaffolding is the word. I hope to never see this scaffolding again in my life. And like, he's like, yeah, just rip all these boards out, blah, blah, blah. It's all cedar. It's the middle of the summer. So I put my crowbar in there, boom. The board falls down, and this wasp nest lands right in front of me. And I'm like, fuck. Shit. And they start swarming. Start saying they're stuck in my beard, they're up my nose, they're going in my head. And so like the problem was there was another wasp nest on the other end of the scaffolding. So I started panicking because I don't know how to get off the scaffolding. Like, I've only been up it once.
Yeah, and you're 6'4", 6'5", and that is not built for the people your height.
So I could have climbed down right where I was standing, but I didn't realize that. So I went through the same way that I got up there, which was walking past another wasp nest. Well, they're smelling all the pheromones. So I got attacked by another wasp nest. So I'm crawling down, yelling at this residential building, like just losing my mind.
First day on the job.
Yeah, getting stung by bees. I throw my hard hat, these things I'm taking off my shirt, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Here's this 250-pound guy freaking out, ripping off his clothes, getting stung by bees. It's now 7:05 in the morning. Been on the job for like 5 minutes.
Good start.
Yeah, the boss is like, you need to go to the hospital. I was like, I'm not leaving.
No.
Not a chance. And everyone's like, you gotta go to the hospital. You got stung like 60 times. And I'm like, I don't care. So I basically felt like high off of venom all day, which was not a fun high. It was like just nauseous. And I was sweating like profusely, like just sweating all the chemicals out. Still went to the gym that night. Refused to get off my routine because I knew if I did that day, then it would set the tone that I would just make an excuse every day to not go to that horrible job. Right? And the job got better as I learned more skills and stuff.
It can't get worse.
Yeah, no, it did. It got better. I started to learn some skills and stuff too, right? So.
That's incredible that you stuck it out, right? Like how you do anything is how you do everything, and I think it just set the tone. And then you got back into boxing once you were out, and you kind of were just doing it to keep fit at that time?
Well, what happened was I was... so before all that happened, I actually moved to Vancouver Island to work in a logging company.
Okay.
That was my whole plan. My whole plan was to just disappear out into the logging camps.
Yeah.
I was totally ashamed. I didn't want to give people my real name.
Like Wolverine. Disappear into the forest.
Well, yeah, and I had the resources to do that. I was working for a family out there that's really big in the logging industry. We'd stay out on the water. There was just the three of us. We'd go up, we'd work, we'd come back. It was great. Well, he ended up like having some problems of his own, and like there was a lot of problems with forest fires and stuff. So we ended up not getting the work, and I ended up not being able to do that. Well, now I'm stuck in a city where I know no one.
Again,
right? Starting over. I don't even want to give people my real name. Like I'm working out at a gym, and everyone's looking at me, and I'm getting paranoid. So I'm hitting a bag one day, and this guy comes up. He's like, "Hey, are you a fighter?" I was like, he kind of like looked like me. He had tattoos. I'm like, "Oh, here we go. Here's an undercover cop again."
Yeah.
Right, for the third time this month, someone's trying to do a sting on me. Well, he wasn't. He ended up being a nice guy. I was like, why don't you come down and train with me? I ended up training at a place called Zuma. I had some experience. I knew Adam and Sarah from before. We had fought on the same card, I think, like years ago. And it ended up being a really positive thing. I ended up, it was funny, one of my main sparring partners ended up being a probation officer at the provincial level.
Okay. That's good, right? He keeps a good eye on you, and everyone.
Well, I had no idea for 3 months.
There you go. That's even better.
Yeah, so
putting
3
on
months later,
right?
I was like, because someone's like, "Hey, do you know what he does for work?" I was like, "I have no idea." He's like, "Well, you maybe you should talk to him, right?" So I go talk to him. He's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." He's like, "I don't care. Do you care?" I was like, "I don't care. We're just here getting the work, right?" Yeah. And so it ended up being a really good thing. I trained at an MMA gym, and it got me to a certain point. I got 6 wins under him. And, I made a lot of good friends and made a lot of good connects, and, I'll always be grateful of that. And then it got kind of to a point back in June where, I needed to make some changes in my career. I had reached a new level, and I needed more attention, right? And MMA is a very cool sport, very difficult sport. But the problem with training at an MMA gym when you're a boxer, boxing is so specific.
Yeah.
MMA is like you have to be pretty good at everything. Right? So you miss a lot of stuff that you don't at a boxing gym. Boxing is so specific, and like your coach has to be with you 24/7. And Adam had about 10 fighters. He has probably one of the most successful gyms in Canada. And he's constantly gone. He has a family, and so I was like, "Look, maybe this time we part ways. I'm trying to get more serious about this." And so hopefully there's no hard feelings. I'm sure there probably is, but that's life, right? You got to do what's best for you.
Well, exactly, and I mean, people will understand eventually too, right? Like the truth always comes out, and they get that you're just doing the best within your own world, right? So then, when did you start competing like high level, and you won the WBU championship, heavyweight championship back in February? Yeah. And you were still living at the halfway house at that point?
Yeah. So what happened was, I'm actually very lucky to have friends in KO Boxing. Right? They're one of the premier promotional companies, and like what people don't understand about boxing is if you don't have a promoter backing you, you're gonna get abused. You're gonna leave the sport with permanent damage. Right? I'm very, very fortunate to have Melanie and Milan looking out for me, because this is a very dangerous sport, obviously. And what happened was I was not really, I was supposed to do that one local fight. I was just going to do a local fight for free. I didn't even care. I was like, I just want to fight someone. I'm pissed. And that fight ended up falling through. So I was like, I was still embarrassed to call everybody. Nobody had my phone out. I wasn't on social media. I was very, very humiliated, and I was very embarrassed and to even contact anyone. So I called Milan. I go, "Hey, Milan, I'm back training again. Melanie, maybe take me into consideration for the new year," which would have been 2016, because I think it was still 2015 at that point. Yeah. And it was right before the December show, and they called me back like 3 days later. They're like, "Oh, but it's tough to come out to Edmonton."
Yeah.
Right? It was not easy for me to come out here.
Right. And to get clearances. And
not even just personally.
Yeah.
This is where I got arrested. This is where I ruined my life, right? This is where I terrorized a lot of people. This is where my addiction was at its worst. And it's not an easy city for me to come back into even today.
Really? Okay.
And so I have a huge sense of guilt of how I let everybody down. And so I went and called them and said, "Hey, keep me in consideration for the new year. I should be ready." They called me 3 days later. And I was in shape, because I'd already been in shape for this fight. They're like, "We have a fight for you in December, 6 weeks." I was like, well, I called my PO. I was like, "Can I go?" And she's like, "Yeah, you can go."
Yeah.
And I talked to my coach. We looked at the fight, and they're like, "Yeah, you can go. Yeah, you can win this fight too." And I was like, "All right, well, I guess we're going back to Edmonton."
It's the things that are the hardest to do for us that I think are the things we need to do the most sometimes,
100%.
right? You have to face that. So that was December of what year?
2015, I believe.
2015, and then you just kind of got on a roll of fights. And
yeah, because I got it. Well, because KO does 4 shows a year, so I would supplement some of those. I went and fought in Quebec in February of 2016. So the next year or two, or no, it was 2017. Yeah, so it was the next year. I fought outside of KO, but usually I'll just be fighting for KO, right? They do 4 shows a year. 4 or 5 shows for me is fine. I fought once in Victoria. So the past 2.5 years, I've done almost 10 fights, I think, or 9 fights. Mm-hmm. And, that's more than enough for me, right? Yeah. So, they just kind of kept rolling. Like from my football days, I have a way of maintaining my body. I know how to eat. I know how to like do proper physio, take care of myself to try to avoid serious injuries. Like everybody gets injured. It's a very difficult sport. I've had to deal with that. But, I just stay on track. I stay very disciplined. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. And
what keeps that discipline for you? How do you not slide back into it? Is it just too much on the line, or?
I have reference points, right? So I think of those times of me sitting on the ground detoxing. I think about the times I've let everybody down. I think about my friends coming to visit me when I'm inside. I'm thinking about running out of money and not being able to use a phone. I'm thinking about having to cash in my pension to pay my lawyers. I'm thinking about being homeless, living in a homeless shelter. I'm thinking about finding dead people in the bathroom. I think about being arrested and sleeping in a loony bin. It's just... I have endless amounts of reference points that I can go over that it's like, are you making the right decision here?
Yeah.
And I still struggle with it. Not so much the drugs.
Yeah.
The drugs, to me, is easy to avoid. I just have I've developed myself mentally where I just don't need that crutch anymore. I just don't. And so people are like, well, what if you get hurt now? I said, well, that would be the last thing on my mind would be taking any sort of drugs.
Yeah.
But, there are certain habits and there are certain mentalities that I still possess that are dangerous in some ways, right? I'm in a very serious sport and I'm on edge a lot. Everything I do is very difficult, so I have to really maintain. I have to understand that not everybody's like that.
Yeah.
So, I can't yell at people. I can't be intimidating. Right. I don't get in road rage incidents. If somebody cuts me off and they start giving me the finger and stuff, I stare straight ahead.
Serenity now.
Yeah, look out my window because, I know what I'm capable of. And
do you get that, because you're big and intimidating looking, do you think people want to challenge you more than an average person? Is it like they have something to prove?
Sometimes, yeah. I haven't experienced that for years. I don't go out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I sit at home and watch movies.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I do. I walk around downtown. I get a lot of attention. People stare, and they more so they just kind of want to engage. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily want to confront. I find anyway.
Right, they want to talk a big game.
Yeah, they just kind of want to talk to you and feel you out and see what you're all about. Mm-hmm. And I have a propensity to mess with people.
That's
so
good.
I totally engage in whatever they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And try to mess with them a little bit.
You gotta have fun in life, right?
100%, right? And messing with people is probably my favorite activity.
So you win the WBU Heavyweight Championship in February, and then you're still living in the halfway house at this point.
Yeah.
And then when did you move out of there? Was that?
I was a few days later.
Yeah. So what was going through your head at that point? Were you like, okay, I think I can kind of put this stuff behind me and I'm looking forward, or do you still feel like you have a pretty big chip on your shoulder?
No, I still have a huge chip on my shoulder because I still have to deal with this stuff every day. I'm still on parole now. Mm-hmm. I have to carry around paperwork with me.
Mm-hmm. How long does that last?
Till next year.
Okay.
So I'm still very aware. The police, if they pull me over for running a stop sign, they recognize my vehicle, they recognize me. I have to call a parole officer. I have to be very cautious. Because I can get sent back for something as simple as talking to somebody in a criminal organization.
Right.
And so it's constant stress, even as something as simple as maybe arguing with somebody outside a restaurant, you're just having a dispute on the phone, somebody could, see me or know me.
Call it in.
And it's a very stressful situation. And then, I've definitely limited myself of where I can go and what I can do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's someone's like, hey, man, we want to fly you out to Vegas. We want to pay you this to go train, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'll never be allowed in your country ever again, right? Yeah. So and that's fine. I don't feel bad because I did it to myself. Mm-hmm. But it still makes me aware of my limitations, which is a difficult thing for me to kind of come to terms with because I don't want to feel limited.
Yeah, so you just focus on doing as much as you can within your parameters, right?
Yeah, I kind of obsess over it.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it a little bit, but we don't have to spend a lot of time. But back in June, I think it was, and you fought your friend Tim Hague. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows the story about that. He passed away a couple of days later. I mean, what kind of wrench did that throw into your psychological development?
I think I think I still carry it with me today. Like, people close to me will be like, I'm a little more irritable or like a little bit more sensitive to certain things. And like, everybody thought I dealt with it so well, but that was just because I've been through so much stuff in my life, going back to when I was a kid and getting counseling and stuff like that. Kind of brought some of that to the surface. So it just created a whole bunch of more issues, but really it's not even about me. It's about his family. And like, when I think about that kid growing up without a dad, like that affects me, right? And Ray Mancini called me. I see these stories and I see these things happening, and every once in a while, like, I'll say it, and like the reaction I get from someone, like, when I was talking to someone, like one of my contenders, I was doing a one-on-one private, I said, look, this is serious business, bad things can happen. And they kind of like look at me because they know, and I'm like, like, it's the most serious thing, right? Like, you have a brand now for life. Doesn't matter what anybody says. That's what I'm associated with for life. Like, there's a certain group of people that have that, and there's a certain group of people that don't. And so, it affects me, but it affects me more thinking about how it affects these other people.
Yeah, of course, as it should, because for you to, get down on yourself about how it affects you, that'd be selfish, right? Yeah. But, it's not about what's happened necessarily. It's about how you're moving forward and how you carry yourself after that, right? Well, it's good that you've got the right mindset about that. Have you seen The Good Son? It's the Ray Mancini story.
Oh yeah,
how he killed Dooku Kim in the ring, and then he met his son years later. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting parallel there. It's pretty amazing that he called you. What did he say to you?
He just said it's not my fault, and he dealt with it kind of in a different way. Like, it was a different scenario because they fought a very close fight right to the end. So the biggest thing that he had to come to grips with was that why wasn't it him, right? Because it was a very close fight.
Yeah. 14th round, right?
Yeah. And so he just kept wondering, like, why it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And then he never really forgave himself. He never really recovered from it.
Right.
His boxing career suffered big time. And yeah, it was pretty amazing that he called me. Like, I couldn't believe it.
That's wild. How did he track down your number?
I have no idea.
You were just in shock, right?
Yeah, well, I was actually fishing, and he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, good, who's this? He's like, it's Ray Mancini. I was like,
the Ray Mancini?
Yeah, I was like, really? And I looked, and it said it was like an Atlanta phone number. I was like, wow, right on. And so he's just like, look, man, it's not your fault. And he's a very Christian guy, and so he goes that route, and he asks for forgiveness and all that stuff, and I don't go that route, not by any means. And so that worked for him, and he's come to grips with it that way, right? So,
well, you don't have the religious path, but I think you run a pretty similar path in terms of just talking about it, being open and vulnerable. Like, you've got nothing to hide, which is pretty incredible. And I think that probably allows you to live the best possible life now.
Well, yeah, and people are like, "Oh, are you over?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not over it. Like, no, I'm affected. I keep it together because I have to. But it's like, I'm affected by it in a lot of ways, right? And I'm affected by everything that happened to me in a lot of ways. Like, every once in a while, I'll start telling stories, and people are like, "You got to stop." I'm like, what do you mean I got to stop? And they're like, "Man, I can't hear this. Like, it's disturbing to hear."
Try living it.
And that's what I say, right? And that's fine. Like, so I'm just wary about like what I say and what I talk about, because it's like, it's not everybody can deal with it.
Yeah,
right.
I'm a firm believer in almost everything should be out on the table.
Yeah,
I think like our lives are just so much more enriched if we're just open and vulnerable and not lying. Like, when you lie, you prevent the other person from seeing the world from your perspective.
Well, yeah.
And so I also firmly believe that if things don't make sense in life, if you see something you're like, what, that doesn't make sense, you just don't understand the whole story.
Well, just people are so sanitized these days, like, especially like some of these younger generations, because what people don't really understand is, like, I was in university, so I've been exposed to like, a moderate amount of education. Not,
we went through college, like, that's
yeah, and so like I have a decent view of how the world works, and what people don't really understand, like, especially like my parents' generation, they had it very easy in some ways growing up. The economy was great. Basically, it was end of the wartime. You get a job, you get a house, you move on. Well, so many kids these days, like, they don't have those opportunities. It's not the same job market. It's not the same economy. So their parents are coddling them, and they're sanitizing them. They're not seeing the real stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they don't understand, like, where their food comes from. They don't understand, like, what real work is. They don't understand what real loss is, because everything's so sanitized. They're so sheltered. And so that's, like, how how they grow up, but I didn't grow up like that at all, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think we're paralyzed by opportunity now too, right? Like you didn't have many options when you're our parents' age or their parents, right? Now it's like you're told you can do everything or anything, but no one really shows you how or tells you how.
Yeah,
you're kind of left just like stunned, deer in headlights. What do I do now?
Yeah, they think if they like learn essential oils or something, become like a millionaire. And it's like it doesn't work like that, right? Like you're gonna have to grind, and like especially now you're gonna have to grind, kick, bite, steal, cheat to like just kind of survive for a lot of people, right? Like especially unless you're gonna inherit a bunch of money or like your parents buy you a house or something. Like good luck. You grew up in Surrey, you get $1 million before you get a house.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. You have to come to terms with the fact that you probably won't live as affluently as your parents do.
No, of course
right?
not, yeah.
And that's a tough reality to face, right? You're like, this is the best my life will be in terms of financial. But I want to ask you a couple more things here. How was the first fight after the Tim Hague fight?
It wasn't too bad, just simply for the fact that I have really good support around me, right? Like, I was still kind of transitioning out of my old gym, Zuma, and people like Sarah Coffins, and they come to my house, they just show up, right? I always have people around, I always have people calling, a lot of positive outreach. My coach Rich, the stage was actually really good, and he brings out the demons in me in the training. Like we train very hard, and so he brought that out of me. He made sure I was there every day. Like I don't get any excuses. Like I got a tracker on my phone that tracks what I do. And I send that to him.
Really?
Right? So it's like, I always tell everybody, I make a joke, I'm like, I got to be monitored, which is true. Right? Like, he even texted me today, he's like, I haven't heard from you in a day, what's going on?
Right.
He's like, that's not a good sign from you. I was like, you're here tomorrow. I was like, we'll have lots to talk about that, don't worry.
Yeah, so this is your trainer at your gym where you're at now?
Yeah, Rich.
And he's here for the fight, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Lestage Boxing, he's good. He trained guys like Mark Wolno, and he won a Canadian title, and Shane Andreessen fought some like really tough guys, top guys, and Banner down in the States and stuff. So.
Yeah. Okay, so last topic, talk about the fight upcoming on Friday.
Oh, I can't wait for this fight. It's one of those things like most of my fights before, minus the last one, were really just me fighting with some boxing skill. This fight, I plan on showcasing my boxing skills.
Okay.
Right? And so that's an important thing for me because, anybody can go out there and just fight and clobber guys. Like, yeah, I'm a big, strong guy. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hurt you. But it's important for me to be real and to say that I'm a boxer.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm learning these skills, and I want to showcase them.
Yeah. Plus, I think the older you get, the less you're able to rely on just pure physical talent, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have some skills behind it.
Definitely.
So it's Friday, Shell Conference Center. What time? What time is it?
7 o'clock, the doors open. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm available for tickets if anybody wants to hit me up at Braidwood Boxing. Or
there you go. How do they reach you?
They can get me on Braidwood Boxing on Instagram. They can hit me up on Facebook. It's just Adam Braidwood.
BRAIDWOOD.
Yeah.
Right? Perfect. Last thing I want to ask you to share with the audience, for people who don't have those reference points of rock bottom, what do you recommend for people to deal with things? Even if they're not like, oh, I'm an alcoholic, but even if they've got that seed of a doubt in their mind, like maybe I'm not doing the right things, maybe I'm going down the wrong path. How do you encourage people to try and really think hard about getting your life together?
Get out of your comfort zone. I think too many people do just that. They stay in their heads and they think too much about what they need to do instead of just doing something. Right? Like if you're battling with obesity or battling with some sort of like addiction or some sort of health issue, then go do something that's uncomfortable. Right? Like go do something that is going to expose you to new people and good things and better things and harder things. And even if you fail and get hurt, you're going to have to overcome that adversity, and then there's your reference point. Right? So go and try and do new things. Like whether it's like, go try a baking class, like go, like whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Like people always come in and they're like, oh, I want to do that. I'm like, go do it.
Do it. What are you waiting for?
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Perfect. Well, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time. Best of luck on Friday.
Right on.
And hopefully I can make it. I plan to be there.
Cool. Let me know.
All right.
Tickets.
Thanks everyone for listening to what was admittedly a heavier episode, but I think there's lots of valuable stuff there to unpack. If you know anyone who you think could benefit from this episode, please share the podcast. Friends, family, loved ones, enemies, dogs, cats, whoever. It's all good. See you next week.